I want to start with the BBC Panorama documentary into Charing Cross, and I want to start with the Commissioner. I just want to understand, did any members of the public featured in the Panorama complain about their treatment at Charing Cross before the broadcast?
I'm trying to make sure my memory is correct on this. I'm pretty sure they didn't, but I'd have to double-check 100% on that.
So I think that's really interesting, because I think that I would have expected them to complain, and I know after the programme you said that it was reprehensible and completely unacceptable, the treatment, and I think we saw extreme uses of force. So would you have expected people to have complained, given the treatment that they experienced?
If people receive unacceptable treatment at the hands of police officers, of course I'd expect them to complain, and I would encourage, I'd do more than that, I'd encourage them to do so. And hopefully they can see, as I said earlier, we've been bearing down on integrity. Removing 1,500 officers and staff in 3 years is completely unprecedented, and there's more to do. The fact that most of those people have already left the organisation is indicative of our commitment to this, and hopefully encourages the public to step forward when they've got information.
And so I'm really concerned that people didn't complain in those situations. And I just wanted to explore whether you recognise the power imbalance that the police has over people and the fear that that might put into them around complaining, obviously different to some of the other kind of public bodies like TfL or the NHS. Like, do you see that power imbalance as a reason why people might not complain?
I guess there are lots of reasons that somebody might not complain about public authority. But that's why we have an independent body, the Independent Office of Police Complaints. So if they don't trust the police, they can go directly to them. Likewise, we've got independent reporting lines via Crime Stoppers, through our own systems. We've given multiple routes in for people to complain. Also, they can do it through third parties. If someone wants to complain, we sometimes get complaints via, probably via your office, via local MPs, via local councillors. And we'll take complaints through all routes and assess them individually, because the small number of officers, minority of officers who we need to remove, we want the information to be able to deal with that.
So I've been reading some of the 30 patterns of harm, the Dr. Daniels report that came out last week. I know that it was finalised in July, but has only just surfaced. And in that report, she states that the Met's complaints pathways are not neutral mechanisms of accountability. And I wondered if you had any reflections on that.
Charing Daniels' report looks across reports over many, many decades and brings her own sort of insight and expertise to the subject. She's encouraged us not to leap into action straight away, which we're not. We're talking about, we're reflecting on it with our staff associations and with community groups. We asked for this report because, regardless of the progress we've made so far on the work under New Met for London, where trust has been growing in London, it's grown even faster with some of the communities with less trust in us, like black communities. And indeed, black communities have a higher confidence in local policing than white communities. And we've also made progress on some internal issues like promotion processes, which now draw minoritised colleagues through at least at the same speed as the majority. But we can see areas we need to improve, and her report will help us identify and bear down on those. So it brings some different insights and some challenging insights, which I'm also pleased that it's resonated with black colleagues in the organisation. That's another reason for us to pause and reflect and make sure we pull out the right issues to work on.
Yes, because I am specifically interested in the complaints process and how you both hear from Londoners about things that aren't working well in the city. To you, Mayor, I recently wrote to the Deputy Mayor of Police and Crime about some of the issues that I'd heard from Londoners around the excessive use of force at protest. And one of the ways that the Deputy Mayor said that the people that had spoken to me could report is through the complaints process. But obviously, as we've heard, even people experiencing extreme violence in Charing Cross didn't even use the complaints process. So I find that a bit worrying. But one of the other ways that the Deputy Mayor said that you do scrutiny of the use of force is through the Commissioner's fortnightly catch-up meetings. So I just wondered what information you review around the use of force and how you get assurance around the proportionate use of force at protest at those meetings.
Well, you've asked a big question, so I'd appreciate a chance to respond to your big question, which is how the police are held to account. Which is not just a London challenge, it's a challenge across the country and across the globe, how the police are policed. Of course there's a power imbalance. Of course there is. Across the globe, when it comes to holding the police to account. And that's why Parliament, in its wisdom, has decided that there should be not just the Professional Standards Directorate in the police service, the police holding the police to account, but an independent office dealing with police conduct. And as the Commissioner said, unusually a third-party route in, because the reasons you've articulated, often if you're the victim of police misconduct, you're slightly anxious about coming forward and reporting that to the police. You asked for some examples of how my bilaterals with the Commissioner lead to some of the issues you've raised being addressed. I'll give you the obvious example, because it's relevant to some of the progress the Commissioner has made, the use of handcuff before arrest. The Commissioner has taken huge steps. Let's not forget a police officer lost his life because of an improper search on the streets, and so the context matters. But he and his team have made a conscious effort to try and reduce concerns around excessive use of handcuffs pre-arrest. At the same time, being cognizant, there's often very good reasons, and forgive me, Commissioner, for talking about these things, but there are often a very good reason why the police need to search and put handcuffs on before somebody's been properly arrested / charged. Another example is the intimate searches of children are raised with the Commissioner. Again, it's worth saying because it's an example of progress made under the Commissioner's team.
Some of that was brought to light, obviously, because of Child Q, and Child Q's case only went to the IOPC after a solicitor intervened. So I do accept that there is an independent body, but a lot of the complaints that go to the IOPC end up back with the police, or, as in I just said, in Child Q's case, it took a solicitor almost 3 months to get the police to refer that to the IOPC. So I think in my questioning, I'm really interested if we could explore maybe removing the police disciplinary system from the Metropolitan Police to look at having that as kind of civilian oversight, or just kind of putting trust back in our communities that they have a properly independent place to report their complaints.
Well, as you know, I've got a huge amount of respect for solicitors who deal in this area for obvious reasons that you're well aware of. I mean, to give, again, this Commissioner, I'm in danger of making him blush, but this is the Commissioner who said to the Home Sec there should be proper vetting of cops. It should be easy to kick them out. I'm fed up with police officers who have acted improperly not having action taken against them. You know, I'm all in favour of lobbying Parliament for changes in legislation. Actually, one of the things this Commissioner has done is do just that in terms of regulations. But if there are any other areas of police misconduct the member wants Parliament to change, you know, I'm more than happy to work with her in terms of that. But I think it would be an unfair characterisation to suggest this Commissioner, and I don't take this issue seriously.
I just think it's about how we're hearing from Londoners who are experiencing extreme uses of force, and if they're not complaining in Charing Cross circumstances, if they're raising their concerns of me and not going to the police, and then I'm being told they need to go back to complaints, I just feel like it's an area that might need a bit of a review.
So we have seen increased complaints with our clear focus on standards. We have seen increased numbers of complaints, and that's been part of help drive the improvement in standards, as has the reporting from within the organisation. We also have independent scrutiny, working with community scrutiny groups on issues like on body-worn video, reviewing use of force and stop and searches and those issues. The IOPC, as we've said, are an independent body that looks at some investigations and oversees us. And of course, our approach to investigations gets overseen by the Independent Inspectorate. So I think you've got a sensible balance of an organisation managing its own misconduct, and we've shown we're more robust than anyone's ever been before, as well as independent bodies outside challenging us, HMIC, IOPC, and the Mayor and MOPAC.
So I wanted to pick up on the community monitoring groups, because I've heard from people who are taking part in these groups that are really concerned that it doesn't have a proper respected route of escalation. So they have reviewed body-worn camera and sometimes reported racial bias and stop and search, which gets referred to the Metropolitan Police, and then it just comes back saying everything's fine and nothing changes. And a lot of them have reported that it feels a bit like a tick box exercise. So I wondered if you're hearing that, because you've just cited it as a route of hearing from Londoners, but it obviously needs a complete review around that escalation process to make sure that it's actually, you know, enacting change.
You've heard a story there. If you've got a concrete example where somebody...
Should they go to the complaints process?
If you've got a concrete example where somebody feels that we haven't responded to challenge well enough, please raise it with me directly if you would.
Okay, I will do, because I think that's really important, because I understand the review's happening, but it sounds like the review's not going to resolve these issues, and it will reduce the number of community meetings. And I know this has been talked about as a new part of community scrutiny, so I'm really concerned that that's not being given the chance and the powers that it needs to have an impact.
I don't think that's the right characterisation, sorry, that we've got so many different community scrutiny bodies that have been set up over many, many years with good intent. Ourselves and MOPAC are working together to bring that together in one more powerful group that has access to all the right sorts of material to oversee and monitor and to have proper influence on our decision making. So that's a joint piece of work. We're not designing it ourselves, but of course it will generate some bumpiness because some of these groups have existed for some time, but it's about creating something that is as penetrating and as scrutinising as possible.
And I think, just a number of issues that we've highlighted here, and again about the report that came out last week. I just want to take this moment to follow up on the 2-year-on Casey review, which obviously was meant to have started in March. We had a vague promise in July that we might hear who's been appointed, but it's obviously middle of November and we haven't heard anything yet. So is that going to take place?
Yeah, I'll be announcing in due course the next review in relation to post Casey. But I can share with the Assembly that Baroness Dame Louise Casey's personal diary means she herself will be able to undertake the next review, but I'll be announcing in due course what that'll entail.
Does that mean I think we had a commitment before that it might be by the end of December, being this quarter, but will it be by the end of the year that we hear who's and get that started? Because I think this shows that there's a number of issues that we need to revisit.
I'll try and do so.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.